President Xi Jinping emphasizes that for the time being, the domestic situation is improving. However, we should never slacken our efforts, and we should take effective measures to guard against the overseas importation. Premier Li Qiang requests very specifically that it is necessary to strengthen the prevention measures at the entry points and in particular pay particular attention to the potential importation by sea and by train. So we have with us today DG Li Yang from the International Cooperation Department of Ministry of Transportation, DDG Song Yueqian from GAC, the Level 2 Inspector, Mr. Jing Junhao from the CAAC, and DG Liu Haitao from the National Bureau of Immigration. So they will take questions about the control measures against the transportation or importation of cases, and also the conveyances, monitoring of the conveyances. Now let me give you the update. Yesterday, China's mainland reported that for newly increased confirmed cases, 31. Among these 31 cases, 30 are overseas imported cases and 1 domestic case. In Gansu, all the fatal cases increased, 4, all of them in Hubei. For newly increased suspected cases, 17, all of them are overseas imported. Yesterday, 322 cases are cured and discharged from hospitals. Close contacts removed from medical observation numbered 1,575, and the number of severe cases dropped by 109. For overseas imported cases, now the remaining confirmed cases numbered 630, including 19 severe cases. The remaining suspected cases numbered 165. In accumulative terms, altogether 723 cases are confirmed, and 93 cases are cured and discharged from hospitals, and there is no fatal case. By the end of yesterday, China's mainland reported that the remaining confirmed cases numbered 2,396, including 633 severe cases. For remaining suspected cases, the number is 168. In accumulative terms, the number of confirmed cases is 81,470. The number of cured and discharged cases is 75,770, and the number of death cases 3,304. Close contacts traced 704,190, and the close contacts are still under medical observation 19,235. For Hubei province, yesterday there was no new confirmed case, no suspect case or remaining suspect case. For cured and discharged cases, 317, including 315 in Wuhan. For new fatal cases, 4, all of them in Wuhan. For remaining confirmed cases, 1,733, including 1,726 in Wuhan. Among these cases, there are 601 severe cases, including 597 in Wuhan. In total, the number of cases cured and discharged from hospitals is 62,882, including 45,733 in Wuhan. For fatal cases, 3,186, including 2,547 in Wuhan. For confirmed cases, the number is 67,801, including 50,006 in Wuhan. In total, from Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan, altogether 977 cases are reported, including 641 from Hong Kong SAR, 38 from Macau SAR, and 298 from the Taiwan region. Since March the 18th, China's mainland first reported 0 confirmed cases. However, over the past few days, we still have sporadic cases reported, so we need to keep alert and strengthen the community-based containment measures and consolidate the milestones. According to WHO updates, yesterday the global confirmed cases increased have exceeded 60,000, and the growth is more than 10%. So we need to keep alert against the importation of the cases and conduct a sound whole chain of transmission monitoring. So that's all for the updates, and now the floor is open for Q&A. Please focus on today's topic and please identify yourself. First question, on the right, on the front row, the first reporter close to the aisle, please. With CCTV, just now DG Mi mentioned that the pressure from the importation is mounting. Previously, we talked about the importation from by air, but over the past couple of days, the pressure from the water route or the sea has been increased, as well as by train. So what are the measures adopted to prevent the potential importation? We will have Mr. Li Yang to answer the question. Thank you for your question. And also, I'd like to thank the journalists for your support and concern for transportation. Just now, DG Mi mentioned that the global increase of the cases has exceeded 60,000. This has posed a big pressure on China. Just now, we talked about the pandemic control measures that we have adopted on roads and on the ports. Let me first give you the basic details. At the moment, we have 65 entry points. Among them, 34 ports have been kept open. The other ports or entry points have been shut due to the seasonal reason or the pandemic control reason. For the remaining 34 entry points, all of them are also only available for cargo transportation, while we have only limited number for travelers or personnel movement, and it is on average about 2,000 traffic volume for the road transportation. Also, we have the inbound travelers from Hong Kong and Macau. Every day, there are about 8,000 truck drivers inbound. So, the Ministry of Education has attached great importance to the prevention of pandemic importation. To strengthen the efforts and implement President Xi Jinping's guidance, we plan to issue a policy circular to all the relevant agencies today. We will alert them to keep alert. We will focus on 4 aspects. The first is on the exits, the entry points. We request that we will continue to suspend the international inbound travelers' entry. For entry points that have already been shut for passenger movement, we will request the closure to be sustained.
For the ports of entry that have their opening delayed, the delay will be continuous. And the land port of entry that have been closed between mainland and Hong Kong, Macau, and Hong Kong and Macau SAR, the closure will be continued. Second, we focus on the prevention measures carried out on the truck drivers. The drivers and the passengers through the land port of entries numbered 2,000, and the drivers coming to mainland through the ports of entries connecting mainland and Hong Kong, Macau numbered around 8,000. And these drivers will go back to their original place. And for those who have to stay over in mainland, they are registered. And for those coming from Macau and Hong Kong, we conduct regular NAT tests on the drivers who may stay over in mainland for some days before they return to Hong Kong and Macau. Third, we also strengthened our control on the transits in Guangxi, Heilongjiang, Inner Mongolia provinces and autonomous regions. There are also Chinese nationals who have entered through the port of entry, and the local government will transit these nationals around around a number of 100 to some designated place. We require all the vehicles that are going through the provinces must be strictly disinfected, and the personal information must be registered and can be traced. Connecting mainland and Hong Kong, Macau SAR, the only way is the shuttle bus on the Hong Kong, Macau, and Zhuhai and the Guangdong Bridge. The daily shuttle bus has been decreased to dozens on a daily basis. Again, disinfection and passenger information must be strictly done, and we have mastered and registered the information of the drivers. The information of the personnel who have come through the land transportation has been registered and can be traced, thus ensuring our dynamic analysis of the information. We also collaborate with Health Commission authorities and border control departments to share the information. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the second row on the right side. Thank you. With the Hong Kong China Review, on 26th of March, Ministry of Foreign Affairs and NIA issued a joint statement of stopping foreign nationals holding China visas or the residence permit to come into China. So what were the considerations behind this notice? What might be the impact for those foreign nationals who do indeed need to come to China? How can they come to China? I'd like to ask DG Liu Haitao to take the question. Thank you for your question. China's domestic pandemic prevention control has been signaling positive, but recently there has been a rapid increase of imported cases exceeding 700. To effectively prevent the importation risks, NIA has been collaborating with Ministry of Foreign Affairs and made a joint statement on certain restrictive measures on foreign nationals' entry into China. This has been in reference to many countries' practices. It is a temporary restrictive measure that has been adopted in this very difficult condition. We believe, under the current circumstances, the minimization of unnecessary cross-border activities can effectively protect the life and health of every citizen, including the foreign citizens. These measures can prevent the pandemic transmission through individual travels. It is a responsible and necessary measure. These restrictive measures cover the following personnel: those who hold effective China's visas or residence permits, those with an APEC business travel card. We've also restricted temporarily the issuance of transit visa of 72 hours and 144 hours. The visa-free permits for Hainan Pilot Economic Zone and the Shanghai Cruise Liner zones, and 144 transit free visa, and the free visa of the ASEAN countries' entry into Guangxi Autonomous Region. I'd like to take this opportunity to remind foreign nationals who hold diplomatic visas, business visas, or the C capitalized visas, who are traveling for transportation or airliner companies who have to carry out their missions. They are not impacted by these restrictive measures. And for those personnel who are engaged in epidemic prevention and control, scientific research, and international collaboration, or any personnel who have to come to China out of humanitarian reasons, they can apply or reapply visa to the Chinese embassies and consulates in overseas countries. NIA will collaborate with Ministry of Foreign Affairs and decide on further changes to the visa policies and make an adjustment where necessary and appropriate. Once there is any adjustment, we will collaborate with Ministry of Foreign Affairs and timely announce the changes. Thank you. Next question, please. Thank you. With CRI, international pandemic has been spreading, impacting the health of Chinese nationals in overseas countries. Will we organize chartered flights to fly them back to China? What might be the future steps? I'd like to ask Inspector Jin Junhao from CAAC to take the question. Thank you for your question, and also thank you for your continuous attention to CAAC's efforts in the joint prevention and control. We've also noticed the concern on this issue. CAAC, in light of the spreading of the pandemic in overseas countries, has recently adopted some policies. Meanwhile, we've noticed that there has been an objective need by Chinese nationals stranded overseas who want to come back to China. The State Council has a general principle of carrying the overseas Chinese nationals. CAC has been following this principle, especially for the cities who are capable of hosting these nationals. CAC is capable of opening some added flights or temporary chartered flights to transport them back to China. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the third row on the left side. From People's Daily 健康报 JKB, the international pandemic has been spreading rapidly, and China is under mounting pressure of preventing imported cases. What are the effective measures adopted by GACC to prevent precisely the importation of cases? I'd like to ask DDG Song Yueqian to take the question. Thank you for your question. the pandemic has been spreading rapidly across the world, GAC has been implementing the guidance from President Xi Jinping and the Joint Task Force leadership. Prevention of importation of cases has been our priority. We've adopted scientific and precise measures to streamline and optimize the customs clearance procedures, collaborated with localities to ensure management measures can effectively curb the transmission.
We've adopted the following measures. First, risk management. The customs is closely following the developments in the world and collect relevant information for risk assessment and dynamic adjustment to the customs control. We've shared information with the relevant agencies and adopted big data to analyze the data, in particular for key routes and key airlines and key populations. We've strengthened the monitoring and screening, constantly improving the efficiency and effectiveness. Second, we have optimized the onboard monitoring. We've strengthened the measures together with the civil aviation authorities, and information sharing is encouraged and accelerated. By inspection on board, we have rapidly screened out the potential risk population and arranged the optimized flow of travelers. And thirdly, we suggested the travelers to make health declaration. In particular, they can use the electronic declaration to reduce the time to be stranded in the airports. We've also optimized the whole procedure by dispatching more professionals and set up more ad hoc posts. We are trying to ensure that all the travelers can take the temperature check and reduce the customs clearance time. And fourthly, we have strengthened the closed-loop management. We have adopted the stringent containment measures, and the local joint prevention and control mechanisms have been utilized to transfer the targeted passengers, and concentrated quarantine is practiced while information is shared to ensure the seamless connection and transfer. Fifthly, we have strengthened the frontline guarantee. We have sent out expert panels to inspect the on-site measures and strengthened the equipment of the laboratory facilities and testing kits. The professionals are dispatched to the frontline laboratories to ensure accurate and rapid testing. Okay, let's continue. On the left, on the third row, the second reporter in black, please. Thank you. With China civil aviation news, I'd like to note that since the outbreak, what is the overall trajectory of the passenger airlines? And yesterday, it was the first day to have a large-scale travel restriction. Then prior to that, have you seen a big inflow of foreign travelers? And what are the containment measures that you have adopted? We will have Mr. Jin to take your question. Thank you for your question. In recent days, the trajectory of passenger airlines, in the light of the two policy documents that the CAAC has issued, we can divide the outbreak or epidemic into three stages. The first one is by March the 19th, when CAAC issued the first policy circular, which is to control the passenger volume. So according to this notice, prior to March the 19th, the ceiling for airlines is over 1,500. That means since the outbreak to the March the 19th, we can find the decreasing number of passenger airlines. And then between March the 19th and March the 25th, this is the second stage, the civil aviation authorities are implementing the March the 19th policy circular. And then when we issued the second policy circular on March the 26th, you can find that the number was cut from 1,165 to 734. So in the third stage, that is after March the 26th, when we had the second policy circular, we can see that between March the 26th to April the 4th, then we have 108 air flights. So this is a great job compared with the first and the second stages. For this 108 airlines, the airliners, we do find that this is a major decrease or major drop. Also, we notice that as the pandemic is being accelerated throughout the world, countries in the world have also intensified their control on the international air flights, and this has greatly affected the inbound air flights, especially for those overseas Chinese and the young overseas students. So following the new policy circular, the international air flights was adjusted to 108, and the destination airports are mainly in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou. They are now have a major drop from 554 air flights last week to 61 flights this week. So this is really a big drop. We can see such a remarkable drop in terms of the number of air flights. And also, we request that the occupancy rate of the air flights should be no more than 85%. So it is expected that in this week, the daily average traveler volume will be reduced to about 4,500. Thank you. Okay, let's continue the Q&A. On the right, on the fifth row, the first gentleman reporter, please. Thank you. Take your time. With CGTN, we know that starting from March the 23rd, all the air flights who are destined to Beijing must enter the Chinese territory from the 12 airports other than the Beijing capital airport. So could you please give us more details about such adjustment? We will have Mr. Jing Junhao to take your question. Thank you for your interest in the civil aviation. Actually, for CAAC, we have found a major challenge concerning the inbound flights from in Beijing. This is because Beijing is a big destination for international traveler, and the customs clearance takes quite a long time because of the pandemic control. That's why, together with the relevant agencies, altogether 5 ministries and commissions, we worked out a policy circular. So starting from March the 19th and March the 22nd, the policy circulars request that all the air flights with the destination of Beijing should arrive at the 12 airports before they finally arrive at Beijing.
2 steps. From the 20th to the 22nd of March, 7 international flights were divergent to Huhao and Taiyuan airports, and the second step was starting from 22nd of March for all the flights coming to Beijing has been diverted to Tianjin, Shijiazhuang, Taiyuan, Huhao, Shenyang, Dalian, Xi'an, Zhengzhou, Shanghai, Nanjing, Qingdao, and Jinan airports. The relevant information has also been uploaded to our CAC website after the policy circular was issued. Take the latest data, for example, as of 29th of March, as of yesterday, we've diverted a total of 100 flights to other airports, involving 23,000 plus passengers. After the quarantine at the first point of entry, 19,207 customers stayed in their first ports of entry, 82.9% of the passenger total. So we have realized our intention of the policy to minimize the importation risk at the Beijing International Airport. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the second row on the left side. Thank you. With China transportation news, waterway transportation is an important mode of transportation. What is the status now in China? What are the measures adopted by Ministry of Transportation to prevent case importation through waterway? Thank you. I'd like to ask DG Li Yang to take the question. Thank you for your question. First, some words on the passenger throughput at the ports of entry through waterways. We have 128 ports of entry on waterway transportation, and all of them have suspended services for passenger transportation, including 14 ports carrying passengers between China, Japan, China, and OK. Also, the ports of entry connecting Taiwan and the mainland and Hong Kong, Macau. All these ports of entry along waterways have been suspended. But as you've asked, it is right that a waterway carries great significance for transportation. 95% of the cargo has been transported via the sea. Therefore, international ships on daily average docks China a total of 500, and sailors numbered 7,000. Plus, to prevent imported cases through waterways, we plan to adopt bigger measures on the following fronts so as to implement the guidance and suggestions from President Xi. First, on passenger transportation, we continue to suspend international ships carrying passengers between China and Japan, China and ROK. We've suspended the cruise liners starting or docking China. We will continue to suspend the cruise liners carrying passengers connecting China, mainland, and Hong Kong, Macau, and the Taiwan region. Second, we will effectively carry out prevention measures on sailors. As I've mentioned, there are still 7,000 plus sailors the majority of which are engaged in international transportation. We require that the affiliated maritime organizations should collaborate with other departments. Without review and approval, the sailors are forbidden to come to the land. We also, for the international cruise liners, they cannot put their international sailors to China's land so as to minimize the imported risks. Second, we require ports to do a good job in case prevention. First, minimize the onboarding work. If there is indeed a need for onboard work as carried out by General Administration of Customs, good prevention measures should be carried out to prevent transmission. Second, on port services, with a good safeguarding measures, the ship examination and the material transportation should be safeguarded to ensure the smooth flow of international goods and commodity. Finally, we need to do a good job in information management, share information with General Administration of Customs and National Immigration Administration. We require the reporting of information for all the international ships prior to 48 hours prior to docking in China. They must file the report ahead of schedule, and they must report the health status of the sailors. Once there is a case identified among the sailors, the shipping companies must collaborate with local government in transferring the patient or the suspected case so as to minimize the importation of risk through waterway. Thank you. Thank you. Next question, please. Journalist from the first row on the left side. Thank you. With people.cn, on 26th of March, CAAC adopted a 5-1 policy to reduce the flights. One airliner from one country is kept, and on a weekly basis there is only one flight between the country and China. What were the prerequisites for formulating this policy? I'd like to ask Inspector Jin Junhao to take the question. Thank you for your question. Once the policy was adopted, it has caught attention from a wide scope. The 5-1 policy adopted by CAAC was based on two considerations. First, in light of the current bigger context. Second, it was based on some of our previous fundamental research. In light of the current global situation, starting from March, global pandemic has been spreading rapidly, and we are faced with mounting pressure of imported case prevention. The imported cases for several consecutive days has kept two-digit growth. To consolidate our previous achievements to promote the orderly resumption of business and to protect the people's safety and health, we must fend off these mounting pressure and challenges. I believe you have felt this firsthand. The national government has adopted the deployment for imported case prevention. To follow these guidance, CAAC has issued the notice on further adjustment to international flights. We further slashed the number of international flights. We've also ensured that the necessary flights between China and other countries has been kept. In accordance with the Interagency Joint Task Force deployment, CAAC has adopted the following measures. First, on 19th of March, as I have previously introduced, we made our first adjustment to international flights. Back then, the ceiling of international flights were reduced to 1,665 per week. We required international airliners can only reduce the flights. Well, we resolved to make that decision because 1,165 per week of flights was only 13% of the total prior to the epidemic. We paid special attention to the imported risk at international airport in Beijing, so we issued a policy circular to divert the passengers to other first ports of entry.
The third measure is that the CAAC has constantly updated the technical guidelines. This technical guideline is issued for the commercial airlines, and it is a technical document. In the latest technical guideline, we make it very specific that for high-risk air flights, prior to the boarding, body temperature must be taken for every passenger. Afterwards, according to our data, from March the 19th to the 29th, the Chinese airlines altogether have persuaded 443 travelers from the boarding, and that was in the international travelers, and more than 1,600 passengers on board have been under quarantine in the cabins, and they have been timely and effectively transferred to the quarantine sites or the designated hospitals. As you can see, pandemic has put forward more requirements on the civil aviation's practices. So, following the joint control and mechanisms requirement, the CAAC worked out the further policy notice to reduce the number of the air flights. So we call it the 5-1 policy. This is mainly about one air flight every week for each airline. The policy circular also requests to have more protection measures on the passengers and the cabin crews and the air crews. Everyone should be under sound protection, and the occupancy rate should be no more than 75%. Also, faced with the mounting pressure of pandemic importation, this 5-1 policy has demonstrated our manner of responsibility and also our determination to guard against the international importation while ensuring the international movement of people and cargo. We wish to contribute to the international efforts against the pandemic. So this is some brief introduction to the existing policy. Okay, let's continue. On the right, on the fourth row, the reporter in black, please. Thank you. With the cover, we noticed that previously the Beijing Border Authority punished the 4 people who have violated the relevant rules and regulations. So what are the specific details? We will have Mr. Liu Haitao to take the question. Thank you for your question. The National Bureau of Immigration Management has adopted measures regarding the information sharing, the deliver of the related passengers or migrants to the appropriate destinations. And indeed, we have adopted a closed-loop management for outbound travelers who are Chinese citizens. The border officers will check their latest border entry record. If they have the border entry record within 14 days, then the outbound travel will be restricted, and such personnel will be transferred to the relevant authorities for further processing. And also for people who violate the relevant laws and regulations, they would be their cases would be investigated and filed, and they will be banned from further border entry in a particular period of time. I would like to remind the inbound and outbound travelers, do please abide by the relevant laws and regulations, and if there are any violations and any unjustified outbound travel, that would be considered as an illegal practice. Once found by the border authorities, such illegal behaviors or the related personnel would be punished by the law enforcement authorities. However, we still find that there are outbound travelers who are Chinese citizens and who are going to key epidemic areas and increase the risk of pandemic spread without proper justification. And such travelings are considered as unnecessary travelings. Therefore, we would like to remind and suggest the people who wish to travel outbound and for unnecessary travels. Okay, thank you. We will continue, but as time can only allow 2 more questions. On the left, on the 4th row, the lady reporter, please. Thank you. With National Business Daily, we noticed that recently the National Bureau of Maritime Affairs worked out the second version of the technical guideline, which is an update of the previous version. Could you please give us the details of such update? We will have Mr. Li Yang to take your question. Thank you for your support for the Maritime Affairs Management. On March the 2nd, the Ministry of Transportation worked out and issued the version 1.0 concerning the technical guideline for maritime management. And on March the 2nd, right here, one of my colleagues, Mr. Yang, elaborated on the version 1 of the technical line. Later, the IMO, the International Maritime Organization, recommended this technical guideline to the international authorities. And this technical guideline is designed to share Chinese experience in the pandemic prevention and control, and also to ensure the health and safety of the seamen working on the international ships and conveyances. Now, in the light of the latest developments of the pandemic in the world, then on March the 27th, the Ministry of Transportation, in particular the Bureau of Maritime Administration, worked out the latest version, that is the version 2.0. The new version has updated the previous version in the following aspects. First, for the overseas ports, when the ships are docking in the overseas ports, how to do a better job.
Second, precaution measures adopted on ships. Third, the precaution measures adopted by sailors. China's experiences on these fronts have been shared with the international community. To be more specific, there are requirements of the shifting of duty by sailors. It is recommended to establish a duty shifting schedule by clarifying the responsibilities to ensure that the prevention and control measures are conducted. Second, the shifting sailors, the docking ports, and the epidemic prevention and control on the current dock and the previous dock, so as to minimize the risk of transmission. It is required that the shipping companies need to have the knowledge of the previous activities carried out by the sailors, so as to ensure when they are boarding they are of a good health status. Second, when ships are docking in international ports, they should look at the risk grading of the relevant ports and carry out the prevention measures according to the risk grades. In version 2.0, we require that those on board who have shown symptoms of coughs and fever, the captain must report to the relevant quarantine authorities and adopt measures according to their instructions. In the guideline, it is also explicitly pointed out that when the ships are docking in high-risk regions, sailors must adopt precautions measures, avoid face-to-face contacts and communication with people on land, and restrict the number and activity areas of people coming from the land, unless for necessary work and life activities. Avoid taking in people from the land. For more specific information, you are welcome to visit our website. Thank you. Last question. Journalist from the third row on the right side. Thank you. China, port of entry news. Currently, the COVID-19 has been spreading rapidly across the world, mounting the risk for importation. In previous meetings, GACC has shared with us the information that 100% of onboard quarantine has been carried out. What are the specific measures adopted by GACC to minimize the risk of importation of cases from waterway? I'd like to ask DDG Song Yueqian to take the question. Thank you for your question. Previously, a colleague from Ministry of Transportation has mentioned that after the outbreak of COVID-19, all the waterway passenger business is suspended. Only cargo and freight transportation was maintained. Waterway transportation usually involves long-distance traveling, and there is a crowd living on the ships. So once there is an infected case, the spread is of high risk. That's why Ministry of Transportation has worked out specific guidance to prevent the transmission through waterways. First, an accountability system. Ministry of Transportation has been collaborating with GACC, requiring strict temperature monitoring. Once symptomatic person has been identified, they must be quarantined to prevent cross-infection on board. The ships must also report the health status of all sailors to GACC, scientifically decide on the quarantine method. GACC will review the health declaration we will look at the previous docking activities of the ships and carry out a risk assessment. Once there is a symptomatic case report by the ship's GACC, will have the anchor quarantine. Prior to the finishing of onboard quarantine, no one or no cargo can get to the land. Second, we have very stringent onboard quarantine. We have 3 screens, 3 examinations, and 1 transfer. Temperature monitoring, medical examination are requested. Symptomatic person must be put under epidemiological survey, medical examination, and be quarantined, and they will be transferred to health institutions. Fourth, once we have decided there is confirmed case, suspected case, symptomatic person, or asymptomatic virus carrier, GACC will require eligible department or agency to disinfect the ships, and decontamination treatment to the materials on board. We will follow closely the health of sailors and people on the ship. I'd like to thank all the guest speakers for taking the question. Tomorrow we will have Ministry of Education officials to take your concerned questions. We welcome you to forward our questions to our mailboxes. With that, we conclude today's press conference. Thank you.